This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Like, wow, do we get to dig in, actually, to the word in today. As this may well be like the most spectacular verse there is. Of course, I always say that, but it's like, oh man, what this verse says. No matter how you read it, English, Hebrew, wherever you go, you get this one just says so much. And I hope that it has the same, that you can somehow see it through the window that we look through dimly to somehow see Jesus in this and what all it is telling us. It's a Song of Song, chapter 2 and verse 4. Definitely, by all means, one of my favorite verses of all time. So, he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. And, what a concept. Like here we have Jesus, all right? And the thing that I started out when I was, again, just deciding that, Lord, I wanted me to put this Song of Solomon in my heart. I was trying to determine through the 119th Psalm, I saw the need to really understand what is a statute and how is this going to be in my heart and how it is connected to the letter Het, because the letter Het is the miracle letter, the eighth letter. Every chapter in the 119th Psalm has 8 verses. And so the number 8, significant as is the letter that represents that number, which is Het, which is our marriage to Christ. And so as I thought about that there were 8 chapters in the Song of Solomon that clearly, as we're trying to determine this Het, that those 8 chapters would be clearly distinguishable as the 8 letters that lead up to the letter Het, which is a miracle. And so when you take those 8 letters, that would mean the first chapter would be all about the Aleph, and the second chapter would be all about the Bet. Well, if there's a verse in the second chapter that has to do with the Bet, this would be this one, and the Bet being the meaning house. And so, and interestingly, as you look, and I did again this morning in the 119th Psalm, all the verses that have to do with being in, that just 2 little words, in. and how cool is it when you know you're in, okay? Like if you just think back to that time you made the team or you made the job or you just got married and you walked in your first house or whatever in the world that was for you, that was like, oh man, I'm in, okay? Well, here's the biggest in that you could ever imagine in the world is he has taken me into his banqueting house, and that house is a Bet. And again, if you just really, I wouldn't rob anybody of the joy of just looking at the Bet section. It's the second chapter of the 119th Psalm, and looking how much that has to do with being in the kingdom, with being in God's house, and in his house means so much because in his house means you're in the family, means that you have the inheritance. That means that you get all those things, but most of all, he is your portion. And so we get him. And that's what's the deal. So the fact that he's taken us into this banqueting house, just the word in, like I could just camp right there, like I'm in. Like how awesome can that really be to believe and know in our hearts that we're in? And again, when you read the 119th Psalm and you look at that Bet section, you can see it all has to do with being in. And let me just tell you, from my standpoint, one of the ways that we know we're in, right, is that if you love his word, like the word, like that was used in the 119th Psalm is debar in Hebrew, which is a daled, and then what? A Bet, and then a resh. And so the idea of his word being a house is right there involved in the whole situation. So to be in his word is to be in his house, meaning not only in the banqueting house, but you're in his family, right? I mean, it all comes together into the same package of the idea of like, man, if you love God's word, you're in, man. I mean, that's how simple, how beautiful, how amazing the idea is. He has taken me, and again, it's not the way it's translated in English, and I hate that, but it says he brought me to, But when you look at that in Hebrew, he brought me in, okay? He brought me in the house. and being in the house is what it's about, okay? And that whole idea of, the wisdom, and then the bet section would be, the wisdom being the aleph section, and the understanding. Well, if we just had the understanding that we're in, okay, I don't know that I can emphasize that any better. I can't get it out of my mind. I've been chewing on it, which again, you chew on the word because it is debar, and it is a matter of being in his house, both in relation and under his shadow, which we just talked about in the last verse, right? That when he was an apple tree and we came under his shadow to sit in his shade, right? I mean, that's the deal. We're in. I'm just telling you. And then the idea of banqueting, okay, I know they did that. I'm thinking they might have been Baptists, because the word banqueting couldn't be more clearly wine than it is. I mean, it's ayin, okay? It's 2 yuds and a nun. That's ayin. So he took me into the wine house, okay? And so I'm sorry if that bursts your bubble, but it just makes my bubble come more alive than ever, because the idea is, right, there's 4 cups of wine in a Seder as we're celebrating the Passover. Jesus at the Last Supper, what did he do? He took wine. What did he make? What was his first miracle? He made wine, okay? Because it was a banqueting house. That's all what Jesus does. He's all about the wine, okay? And when we take communion, we are taking his blood, and it is a banquet. It is a banquet. And so he's taken us into his wine house, right? And there's so much we've talked about already, but let's just review that the idea of wine has to do with it gets better with age. And you don't think the kingdom's going to get better with age? Like, oh my goodness, every day it gets better. And the other thing being that it allows us to drop our inhibitions and be totally ourselves around God. Then that's the idea of being blessed, which again starts with a what? Bet, because you're in. And when you know you're in, when you know that deep down in your soul, you can be yourself. You don't have to put on a act anymore. You don't have to be like a veiled woman, beside the flocks of his companions. You can take off the veil. You can be yourself, and you can be in the banqueting house like, oh my goodness. And then if all that wasn't enough, then they're going to say that his banner over me is love. Like, can you picture this scene? Like, there you are, you're sitting in his house, you're in his kingdom, and he's got a big old sign over your head. You call it's an ensign, whatever. It's a flag. It's your very own flag. It's your Robbie flag, or whatever he calls me, faithful. And there's this big sign over the top of me. And what it is his love, which is, by the way, his blood, which is the iron. Okay. All those things all come together in this same picture. And so I couldn't be, I can't think of, I remember, this may sound crazy, but you try out for the basketball team at this point in time. I'm so uncoordinated, I can't even dribble. I remember being in the 7th grade, and I really couldn't dribble. I was very tall, but I was totally uncoordinated, tripped over my own feet, and it was my wildest dreams that I would ever make the basketball team, because I was a lily of the valleys. I was in a really low place, even though I looked tall, because I had no concept that I could ever be a member of the team. And I looked up on the sign-up sheet, and there was the list of the team, and I was in. My name was on that list, and nobody was going to take it off. Okay? I was in. And I remember that feeling of being chosen, right? Of being, whatever anybody considered good enough. Well, can you imagine? Your name is in the book of life. And not only that, but his banner, it's over your head, man. I mean, how cool is it that you are in? I mean, this thing is like, oh my goodness. This whole chapter has to do with being in. You're in. Okay? And I hope, like me, you're looking forward to that being better and better like wine. And how do you know you're in? Well, do you love his word? Because it's debar. It's in there. It's in there. It's like all you have to do to get in, if you've fallen away for the next 10 minutes or something, just go back, open up his word, and you're in. The second that you see you're in. I mean, it's just wonderful. Thanks for listening.